here because I always forget to record. There we go. So I would love for people, oh, I see. Hi for that. So I'm so excited for today. Today is going to be so fun. Doing a behind the scenes look at my most recent program. So sorry, Andrew, I just put you on mute there because there's some noise coming through. So if you need anything, you'll have to unmute. But I'm really excited just to kind of take you behind the scenes of what I've been working on. But I would love to hear from you. You're more than welcome to either unmute and share, or you can just put it in the chat. If there's anything in particular that you're like, oh, I kind of want to like snoop on how Emily does this. Like, you know, I came to this cafe because I have a specific question or because I really wanted to see something in particular. So I'd love just to hear from you. Like I said, you can either unmute or just pop it in the chat. If there's anything in particular you're hoping to learn. I hear some typing. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes for people to join here, but I'll kind of let you know what we're going to be doing today. So I'm really going to be focusing on kind of the journey and the evolution of my program, the incubator, because I think it's such a really interesting thing to learn and see, like not only what the original concept of the program is, but how it can evolve, because we really do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get things perfect when we start with our program. And so I kind of want to show you like where I started, what my original intention was, how I made the decisions to kind of shift and grow things. And then I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to take you behind the scenes of what the new course portal looks like, some of the new materials, all those fun things. I'm also in the middle of migrating from LearnDash, which is self-hosted on WordPress, over to Learn Plus. So you'll be able to kind of see what the back end of it looks like and ask any questions about that as well. So if you're the type of person that prefers just to kind of like have this playing in the background and like not respond or like just kind of like hang out, that is totally fine. I don't tend to pick on people unless you're one of my clients, then I might call on you for here. Hi, Erica. So I just want to let you know, like you don't have to worry. It's not going to be like, you know, math class in high school where it's like, oh, please don't pick me. But definitely this is your time. So for those of you who took the time to come here live, I really want to make sure that you get what you need out of this experience. So if there's anything in particular, you have questions, you want me to go deeper on something, please feel free to either pop it in the chat or you can like use the raise hand feature on Zoom and just say like, hey, I have a question or I'd love to see this, that type of thing. So I'm just going to kind of dive in. We may have a few more people kind of joining us as we go along. I'm just going to keep my eye on my phone in case anyone needs the link. So where I'd like to start is just by talking about the kind of concept of like letting your program be iterative. So kind of like I mentioned at the start of this is that we can often feel like a program is a one and done thing. Like we have to create it, it has to be perfect, we have to get it out there and it can't change. And not only does this put a lot of pressure on us as creators, but it also can, you know, inhibit our communication with our students and our ability to be responsive. And so this is where when we treat our programs like a living creature, it can be really, really powerful because then it allows us to be slightly less perfectionistic with the materials that we create, but also allows us to have that two-way communication with our students. So I want to talk to you a bit about my group program, the Incubator. So I ran the first round of this program this fall, and we just wrapped up on Monday for the first cohort. And my original intention with this program was I wanted to find kind of a hybrid between my one-to-one services, which are a higher investment, and then my self-study courses, which didn't have as much hands-on feedback from me. So I know some people are like, give me the self-study, I can totally roll with it. And other people are like, you know what, I just want your eyes on what I'm working on. I want your feedback. I want to be able to ask you questions. So I hear my dog freaking out in the background. So what I did is I was planning out the incubator and I was like, what feels like a good container to start with? I was like, okay, let's do 12 weeks as a group program. We're going to have weekly group coaching. And when it comes to group programs, I've seen all sorts of different structures. I've seen ones that are like really tightly connected to curriculum. I've seen ones that are completely unstructured. It's just like show up and ask your questions and we'll figure it out. And I wanted to fall somewhere in the middle. I was like, I want them to have access to my program suite so that they have the curriculum that they need. But I was like, but I also want us to be moving as a cohort kind of through major milestones. Because I know that when I was kind of surveying my audience, I was asking them what they wanted. I was like, okay, we need a lot of accountability. But what I quickly found in the cohort was that even though people asked for accountability, people didn't want it. So I gave very clear homework assignments. I was like, this is what we're working on, this is what I want you to do. And very rapidly, I noticed the cohort was separating in terms of where they were and what they were accomplishing. And I realized, about a month and a half into the program, I was like, one of my major philosophies is letting people go at their own pace and doing things their own way. And I kind of realized, like, I kind of lost sight of that philosophy with this program because I was like, I really wanted to kind of have, I called it an incubator, but it was almost more of an accelerator. Like, we're going to hit these milestones, we're going to create these things. But it kind of started to feel counter philosophy to what I wanted. And so I adapted to what the group needed. And we kind of took a little bit more of a flexible structure, responding to what people were working on, answering their questions, giving them feedback privately in Boxer. And we were able to make a lot of progress that way. And as I was thinking about it, as I was like, okay, I'm planning on launching this program again in the new year. I was like, I'm going to be releasing it in February. I was like, what needs to shift to really support my people? How can I give them, an action plan, give them those milestones to keep them accountable while still honoring that they could go at their own pace? So I made a few key decisions kind of based on the experience I saw from my students, as well as based on like my own experience being the leader and facilitating the container. And one of the key decisions I made was to take the program evergreen. Instead of having it be a cohort based, I wanted people to be able to come in at their own pace, to be able to set the timeline that they needed, and then still be guided through something very, very specific. And so when I was sitting with this, I was like, okay, how do I have an evergreen program, but still keep them moving along, give them enough structure so that they kind of know what they need, but not so much structure that they feel like they're falling behind. And so while I was kind of holding all of these, I came up with the idea of doing custom program pathways. Now, this is something I am a huge advocate for if you have a bigger program. So if you have a program with a lot of curriculum, if you have a program where people maybe need to access things in different orders, having a program pathway can be super, super helpful to your people. And it also helps it kind of shake that like one size fits all mentality, which can really be detrimental to people's learning journey if they're feeling like they're trying to squish themselves into one approach and it doesn't work. So this is something we see a lot in programs that maybe aren't as linear, or the linearity of the program shifts kind of depending on what it is they're hoping to accomplish. So before I kind of show you how I came up with these program pathways and show you what they look like, I'd love just to check in and see if you have any kind of questions based on what I've shared so far around kind of taking information you gain from your students and shifting your program, or even how to set those original kind of loose intentions in the beginning. If you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and be like, yeah, I have a question. Let's give you a minute here.
I'm interested in how like communicating with people who are already in while transitions are happening. Like sometimes I find that sometimes as we're being responsive when we're trying to shift things in real time, that it gets kind of clunky with people, and sort of like how to like gracefully doula people into new structures. That is a curious thing for me.
Yeah, such a great question. So really at the heart of this, like transparency is so key. And I had the advantage because everyone inside of this, the first round of the program, was building a program of their own. So I got to be able to kind of like treat it like a meta thing of being like, this is how this happens when you're running a program and being responsive. And so what I did at like very key moments, especially when I was kind of shifting, is I'm trying to think how to describe it here. So one of the biggest things I did and I tried to do was check in with them every time. So in the beginning, I was like, I really, want to take advantage of the wisdom of the group and have like breakout rooms and like put people into little pods and have them be able to like have, feedback and that type of thing from each other. And I did that for the first two or three calls. And I checked in and I was like, how do you like these exercises? And everyone was like, yeah, I don't really like them. I was like, okay, cool. So based on the fact that you didn't like those exercises, we're not going to do that type of thing anymore. Do you prefer the more kind of free-flowing open Q&A? And everyone was like, yes, we do. So that was kind of like micro elements of the program. For the larger elements of the program, what I did do is about the halfway point, so about 2 months in, I made the decision to extend the program by an extra month, so from 3 months to 4 months, to give them more transition time. And then I also shared, I was like, my original intention, my original thought was this, this was kind of what I thought the program was going to be. But here are the things that I've been noticing from you. And I just kind of said, I noticed that I'll give a homework assignment, but they're not always done. I've been available for this, but I'm not hearing questions. And what I want to know is like, what would be helpful for you? And so I heard from some members, they're like, I want some more accountability. I want this, I want that. And so I was like, okay, totally. But also we want to always balance, like, when we're in that level of responsiveness, and if you're a people pleaser like I am, we also need to make sure that we're empowering our members. So in this case, when they're like, I want accountability, I turned back to them and I said, okay, you tell me what you need. You message me what you need. And what some people did is they didn't actually message me. And I was like, okay, so like we need to let them have that accountability for themselves. But the biggest thing was kind of like you said, like when I love doula as a verb as well. I think that's such a great use of it. When you're doing that change, is just to share what's happening. And I think even like if we take kind of thinking of what a doula does, being like, okay, this is what you're going to experience now. You may be feeling this sensation and this is what's happening. Here's what's going to happen next in the next hour. So letting people know what has happened, what's coming up, and why you're making those decisions, having the intentionality behind it can be really, really powerful. And then on top of that, for the most part, what I did is I kind of adapted to what the group needed for this first cohort. And then I made the majority of the changes for this next cohort coming up. And what you'll see is I made some very clear like pathways and guidebooks. And I actually just gave access to the previous cohort as well. I was like, based on what you said, I heard that this would be super helpful for you. So I just want to give it to you because you inspired me to create it. So it's kind of a both and. How does that resonate for you?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I love that also, just being like, this is what I learned from you all. And here's like the offering that inspired that. You don't miss out on it just because you were round number one, all of that. So that feels good. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a great question. Any other questions before I kind of show you the back end of things? Whoa, sorry, it's like a huge flock of crows just flew in front of my window. That was like so many. Okay, amazing. So what I want to show you here, what do I want to show you? Let's see here. So before I kind of share my screen and I show you what these materials look like, I want to share with you kind of the process of how I came up with the pathways, because sometimes this can be something that's a little bit tricky. It's something I support my clients with a lot, is knowing like, is it one pathway where I say kind of start here, module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we kind of lead them through in a linear order? Or is it something a little bit more modular where they stack things in different ways? So what I was doing is I was thinking about like, how did I want people to move through this experience? And I realized that, how people build their program really comes down to what their launch approach is. So are people pre-selling? So they need to have a program design, then a launch strategy, and then build their program. Are they the type of person that wants to have the whole program built before they launch? So I kind of looked at the phases that happen in the course creation cycle. So program design, program building of your materials, and launching. And I went, okay, how do these stack in different orders depending on the different launch approaches that people are taking? And that's what I used to kind of inform my pathways. And so when in doubt, this is like one of my biggest secrets for designing a program, when in doubt, quantify things. So we don't want to have unlimited pathways. We don't want to have like so many that it's overwhelming for people. So in this case, I dialed in on 3 pathways that I wanted to give people the option of. Now, I find that a lot of people, especially when it comes to creating a course, like there are so many questions, there are so many moving pieces that there can almost be a bit of analysis paralysis. And so I wanted to make sure that people felt really supported and didn't feel this sense of like, oh, like what if I choose the wrong pathway, or what if this approach doesn't work for me? So I decided to create a quiz so that people could then be presented with like, here's the pathway that I recommend. And then they could kind of do a gut check and be like, okay, this feels really good. So I want to show you what it looks like when people join the Incubator Hub and kind of how I set this up. So let me share my screen here. So many tabs open. All right. So this is what it looks like when people join the incubator. So they get access. I'll just hide my own view so I can see everyone here. There we go. So how I structured it, and this is, you can see this is inside of Learn Plus. When people sign up for the incubator, they unlock all of my courses. And so this is kind of what it looks like from their dashboard. We can see we've got kind of the incubator one at the very top. This is the first one I want them to open. And then they have access to all of my other programs, some that haven't launched yet, like Audience Alchemy, and other ones that exist for them to access. And then when we go into the incubator hub, this is their start here. And in their welcome email, it tells people to like, this is where you should come in. So your welcome and your orientation to your program are so important. So this is why I want to focus here on the kind of like behind the scenes, is talking about what to include when you're welcoming people into your program, because this is where you really want them to feel safe and supported and like they know exactly what's happening, especially if you have a program that doesn't have a live element. This is where often we can lose people. They come in and they're like all excited and they want to click around and they want to check out all the things. And then if they get confused or they don't know where to go or they don't know how it works, this is where very quickly they'll be like, oh, I'll come back to this later. And then they like never do. If your program has live elements, like in this case, the incubator has weekly calls, then we have a little bit more of a chance to kind of grab onto them and like get them used to what they're seeing. But with self-study programs, we want to walk them through what to expect. So this is a homepage, and whatever course platform you use, you'll be able to set up some variation of this, whether it has video, whether it has text, whether it has links. So in this case, I'm using Learn Plus, which is connected to ThriveCart. And the kind of key things that I wanted people to see is like a little welcome message from me when the calls are. Eventually, I'm going to record a video and have like a video message from me, but I was like, you know, got to get this program out there so people can start experiencing the awesomeness. And then I have kind of like the 3 things to help them start. So we've got the welcome guide, which walks through like success tips and like, you know, program logistics and all those fun things. We have the questionnaire, so I can kind of get some information about them and what success looks like for them in the program. And then they can join the private community as well. So this is kind of how I set up the welcome, is just like the basic kind of administrative housekeeping. Then what I recommend everyone has is some sort of start here orientation onboarding section where you walk through how your program is structured. So what are the different components in the program? Are there calls? Are there guidebooks? Are there curriculum? That type of thing. Letting people know what the different components of your program are so they know how they all fit together. And then any sort of next steps that they have to do. So in this case, there's an onboarding questionnaire and there's Voxer support if people want to upgrade to private coaching. So in this case, again, I want to add, I think eventually I'm going to add a video here. There we go. But for now, I wanted to make sure that the information was there. So kind of walking through the main components that people can expect. So this program portal and their guidebook, the weekly calls and reflection forms, and then the course curriculum that supports them are kind of like the 3 major components of this program. So walking through what it is and why it's important for them to care. You always want to make sure that you have the kind of why behind what you're including so that people can like not be like, okay, this is great, you're sending me this thing, or I have to do this thing, but like, I don't see how it connects to my goal. So these are kind of like the housekeeping nuts and bolts, the like less sexy part of the program. So now I want to show you the parts that I'm super excited about, that I'm just like so jazzed, which is the program pathways. So what I did is I set up a separate module for the program pathways, and I have like a lesson set up for each one. And I have some pathways that are coming for people who have courses that want to refresh them. But for now, I was focusing on people who don't have a course and they want to create something new. And so I started with just kind of an overview of like what the pathways are and what they include, and then also a link to the quiz, so that this asks kind of key questions to help people decide what pathway feels best for them. So I kind of encourage them to go through the quiz. They can choose which approach feels really good based on the quiz. And if they get a result like that, they're totally like, this does not sound like me at all, then they can kind of go back and they can read the descriptions in each of the pathways and see which one feels better. For me, one of my biggest intentions was I really wanted to make sure that there was choice all throughout the program, but a structured choice. Because I know firsthand how frustrating it is to get a one-size-fits-all formula, whether it's like you have to launch this way, you have to create your course like this, and then it doesn't feel good to you. So you're like, oh my goodness, I like don't even want to do this. Like this doesn't, I'm just going to drop it. But I also know on the opposite end of the spectrum, when we have too many options and we're kind of newer in our experience level, then it can feel like, well, I need someone to tell me what to do. So this is where I wanted to give structured choices so that it's like, okay, you have 3 pathways. Here's the one I recommend through the quiz. And, you know, here is like, if you want to do something different, you can read it. So what I can even do here, if you're curious, I set up my quizzes in Interact. So I'll just pop a link if you want to kind of go through it and see what it looks like. If you're curious, just kind of how it looks. I'll set that in the chat there. But basically, it's just a short and sweet, just a few different questions to go through, mainly focusing on what are the main components that influence the approach you should take, you know, how you manage your creative energy, how experienced you are with your subject matter, kind of what approach feels really good. I love Interact as quiz software, by the way. This is what I use. Super, super big fan. And it's really easy. It is paid. It is a paid software. So there is definitely options for you. If you don't want to pay for additional quiz software, if you're incorporating a quiz, you can always use like a Google form, or even like I call them like Cosmo quiz style, where it's like a PDF. They just like circle A's or B's or like that type of thing. So based off of the quiz, people are then presented with a pathway. So in this case, there's 3 pathways, and I'm going to show you the architect. So I call it the architect because the architect focuses on building before launching. So this is where you design your whole program, and then you build the program, and then you launch it, opposed to the other pathways, which involve like pre-selling or building a little bit and then launching. So what it looks like is then people get access to a guidebook. And this is really the roadmap for the whole program. And so this is where I wanted to kind of take the mystification out of the course creation process, because what I heard, especially from my first cohort members, was like, can you just give me a step-by-step roadmap? Like, I just want you to tell me what to do every step of the way. So I put together these guidebooks for people. And as always, whatever sort of materials you're giving, especially if they're kind of core like this, like a guidebook or a welcome guide or something like that, I really like the idea of including some sort of overview page that shares kind of key information. So in this case, we have talking about like, what is the energy of the architect pathway? How does it focus? Like, what are you going to be doing? You know, as well as some tips for success and kind of procrastination tips. So again, when you're kind of thinking about what content to include, you want to think about what's finding that balance between what's going to be too overwhelming versus what's going to be like just the right amount. And when in doubt, like less is more, because you can always add more in, but it's a lot more overwhelming to like pull stuff out. So when in doubt, I always like to say, like, is this a need to know or a nice to know? And if it feels like a nice to know, then I tend to like leave it out in the beginning. And then if I start getting a ton of questions around things, then I add it in. So a couple different levels of information. And this is something where visuals can be such a huge help. So this is an example of what I did here for this guidebook. Let me just make sure you can see most of it here. I wanted to give people a roadmap of what 4 months in the program could look like and roughly what they would be doing and when. So the guidebook gets into more information in a little bit, which I'll show you, but it can be really helpful to give people like a high level overview of where they're going, especially if they're going to have like an end product. So if you're helping them build a website, or if you're helping them like shift their mindset, or if you're helping them achieve a very specific goal, something like that, being able to represent kind of what the journey looks like at a high level and what the milestones are, or what, you know, the kind of major phases they're going through. Obviously, it's going to be very dependent on your content. It can be helpful to give them some sort of like bird's eye view before getting into the tiny little details, because this can help with overwhelm as well as like motivation to be like, okay, I can kind of see where I am. Okay, so before I show you like the super detailed action plan, I'd love to know if you have like what questions you have for me, or anything else you want me to like re-explain or show again, based on what I've kind of shared so far about the process. Finette says, this is amazing. Thank you, Finette. I'm like so obsessed with all of these changes. Mary Grace says, love a big picture overview. Yes, it can just be so helpful just to see like, oh yeah, this is where we're going. And this is something I haven't put in the guidebooks, but I'm probably going to use like in my marketing materials, because I actually created as well. I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of small. I created like a visual also this way that shows the milestones. So it's less about the phases, but more about the milestones that people complete along the way, as well as I've designed this program to have like things that unlock once you finish each milestone. So at major spots along the way, you unlock like bonuses. You unlock a call with me, or you unlock a video review, or you unlock a sales page review by a copywriter, like all these types of things. So there's lots of different ways of like presenting the information from a bird's eye view, but definitely like having those visuals to support it can be really, really helpful to anchor people in the journey. And then it's also something that you can reference throughout your course, especially if it's a longer course. So you can be like, hey, remember in the beginning how I showed you like this journey? Now we've actually moved along to this point. Another way that you can use these types of like high level overviews is also if you have like an offer ecosystem. So like I'm even thinking like Erica for you, where you could show a visual of the full journey, but then be like, this course focuses on this part of the journey. And then this course focuses on this part of the journey. So you can show it as a way of situating what you're focusing on in a program, and then also showing what the program journey is. So these are kind of like the high level views. And then, based on popular request, I created a detailed action plan. And I will let you know that creating detailed action plans takes so long. So if you're thinking of doing them in your program, like give yourself some breathing room, because it's about finding that level of like how comprehensive is comprehensive. And so this is where, you kind of get to decide like what level of detail you want to get into. So in this case, I tried to think of like major deliverables or like major decisions that my people had to make along the way. And so I worked through with all the different actions, and then I put the supporting materials. Because in the case of the incubator, instead of it being like one big program, people get access to my full program suite. So this way I wanted to make sure it was really clear, like what are you accessing when, especially in the case of launching, because sometimes you have to make decisions for your launch and then you have to go and build your course a bit, and then you go back and you do some stuff for your launch. And that kind of back and forth can be really hard to keep straight in your head. So I was like, okay, how can I put this into an action plan that's like really, really detailed for people? And the kind of byproduct of this process, which was really helpful. So in this case, we have the unlockable milestones that I mentioned. So, major milestones that people accomplish, like mapping out your program macro structure. So the structure of your program at a high level, and then they unlock a 45-minute private call with me. This also gave me a visual to make sure I wasn't giving people too many steps to do before they hit a milestone. So to really make sure that there was that momentum moving through the program. So we can see here, we've kind of got milestone 1, and then we scroll a little bit and we're not going too far before we get to the next milestone that people can unlock. So this also, for all the different pathways, the milestones move around depending on the pathway that you're on. Same with like your action plan is different, but it gave me a really clear anchoring to see that I wasn't ever asking people to do too much before they like won something fun, whether that's like a video review or whether it was a call with me. One of the milestones that I'm really excited about down here, where is it? Is the sales page review. So this is one of my clients who's a copywriter. So I actually am hiring them to do a sales page review. So this is like something that's kind of like super juicy once you get to this milestone, is like knowing that I walk you through how to create your sales page copy, but then it's getting like double checked by a professional copywriter. So again, just like thinking of ways you can kind of support your people, thinking outside of the box, and then making sure that they're never going too long without a milestone. So for instance, even like here, these look like they're really close together, but I think as anyone who's ever had to launch something knows, writing sales page copy and writing sales emails is a slog. So I was like, okay, I want to make sure that like they don't have to go too long before they feel like they get a win. So this was my kind of like my intentionality behind how I put the incubator together, and kind of, my thought process behind it. I would love to hear if you have any like specific questions around like what that looked like, or if you want to kind of talk about your program and how we could apply similar concepts. This time is yours. So any questions you have that I could answer, I'd love to hear from you.
I don't have any question, Emily, but now I really want to sign up. That looks amazing.
Oh my goodness, you should. We can work on like all those programs that you have coming up.
I know, but I've decided to table them for a few months, so this is really nice.
I'm tempting you. Well, I would always love to have you. This program is like, I think it's a masterpiece. I'm not even going to humble brag about this. I'm like, I think this is possibly the best thing I've ever created. So, of course, I'm like, everyone should sign up.
That looks amazing.
Yeah. Thanks.
I have one. I'm thinking about my own program that we're working on right now, and how like this program is a several month long program, and I love the idea of an overview and a highlight, or like going through the journey. I'm just curious, if there is like, do a lot of these elements feel necessary for something that's shorter? Like I want my people to be able to take action and get through at least the core parts of like all of the elements to get their resume out there and start booking interviews like in less than a month. And I'm wondering if maybe something more like an ideal timeline would be helpful for somebody, something that's like gives a sense of urgency within the program, because procrastination is such a big part of why people don't succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, such a great question. So like I could see maybe like a visual, something kind of more at this level, like a higher level, where you kind of could say like week 1, do this, week 2, do this, that type of thing. And I think it's always like giving like recommended timelines can be really, really powerful. And then it kind of gives you, you can think of, there's a couple different ways of approaching it. One is you can incentivize it. So it's like, if you get this in within a month of the program, like you get a prize or you unlock something or like whatever, you can kind of think about it. I know your program's like a little bit like it's a lower ticket program, so we don't want to like put something that's either a huge administrative burden or like going to be a big draw on your time. But sometimes if we know people are going to get stuck in a procrastination pit, those little like external incentives can be like really helpful. And then on the other hand, also like weaving this into the course materials is thinking about things like how you can say like, okay, I don't want you to procrastinate on this. So like, this is what good enough looks like almost helping them, like addressing the things that stop them from taking action. So is it that they're perfectionists and they don't want to get it out there until it looks a certain right? Is it that they're being too picky and they don't want to apply for a job unless it's exactly perfect or something like that? Sometimes like some gentle but slightly snarky calling out of like, okay, this shouldn't take you 3 months. Like, I want you to do this type of thing. I think could be really, really powerful. But I love the idea of like a recommended timeline, because I think that also feels really good for people in your program promise. If you're like, if you follow my timeline, this will be done in 6 weeks or 4 weeks or something like that.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah. How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels good. And all these things are so beautiful. Ah, so nice.
I cannot take care of this. I did hire a designer for these, and I kind of sketched them out and then was like, do this. And then I'm a really annoying design client because I know like enough about design to be very, very picky. So thankfully Kelly is unbelievably patient with me when I'm like, oh, this isn't the right shade of pink, or like, oh, this isn't this. But yeah, she is the one that brought together like the overview and like the pathway guidebooks and like all of those things. So she is definitely the architect behind it all. What other questions do people have for me? Is there anything in particular you're hoping to see kind of behind the scenes today, or anything with your own programs that you would like to chat about? We've got lots of time today. I know it's always hard being like the first one to speak. It's like, oh, I just came here to listen. Like, I wasn't planning on asking questions.
I have a question about your people who've gone through your programs. What percentage of them launch before they're done versus wait until they're all done to launch?
Oh, that is such a great question. I'm trying to think through my people. I would say, I don't have an exact percentage, but I would say the majority of my people wait until they have the full program built before they launch. Because I find a lot of people who gravitate to me are the ones that like, you know, want things to be perfect and kind of can overthink all the different details, and then also have more like of a sensitive nervous system where the idea of like launching without it being fully done can feel like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. And then also I find like the biggest thing around, you know, when you're thinking about should I build my whole course before launching, also kind of depends on the demand that you know of for your program. So I find a lot of people who come to me are very, very successful in other formats, like they do the one-to-one work, or they've been doing it, you know, in corporate or something like that. So they know they have the skills and they know their audience is like hungry for what they have to sell. They just haven't ever packaged it up into a course. At which point there's like less of a risk of building the whole course and then launching it, because you know people are going to want it. Where if you're like at the point where like, I don't know if people are going to pay money for this, that's where I'm like, you should always, it doesn't matter which pathway you're on, you start with a program design. So that's not where you're building your materials, but you are mapping out the whole program. And then you can make the decision, am I going to pre-sell this or am I going to build this? So I'd say I'd say 75 or 80% of my people build the whole thing first before launching. Such a good question. Okay, so Andrea wants to know how Thrive Cart Learn works. A quick overview. Absolutely. I'm obsessed with Thrive Cart Learn. I have only been on it for a couple of weeks, but it is like, I'm in love. So I don't know if you were on the tech call, Andrea, but I've kind of been behind a couple, well, I've seen behind the scenes of pretty much all the course platforms out there just through my client work. And I started on Thinkific, and then I moved to LearnDash, and it was a nightmare, and I love Thrivecart Learn. Oh, you were there. Okay, amazing, amazing. So for those of you who have maybe seen Thrivecart before but haven't seen Learn, your Thrivecart dashboard looks pretty much the same, but it's added on this new little Learn feature, which is what I'm on now. And so you can set up your courses here. And so I'll just kind of take you behind the scenes in the incubator. I'll let you know that for some reason, I think it was because my team was working on it behind the scenes, it kept booting me out. So I'm going to hope it doesn't do that while we're on the call, but there's a small chance it might do that. So you can either preview your whole course, which is what we've been looking at, or you can kind of go behind the scenes here. Oh yeah, it wants me to sign back in. Come on, let me in. We'll see. This is what it was doing. It's going round and round, but we will make it secure. There we go. Okay. So when we go kind of behind the scenes in the course shell, what I love is the builder is like so friendly. It is like really, really easy to use. So it's as simple as like drag and dropping your module, and then you can put your lessons within your module. So these kind of lightly ones, these are the module titles, and then your lessons are underneath here. It's really easy. You can just like literally click to edit the title of them. So you can do kind of like add an overview, see what your course looks like. And this is, if we hop over here, this is what we see on the sidebar here. So these kind of little ones here is our modules, and then these are our lessons. And then you can also add like a thumbnail for the course. So that's what you saw on the dashboard when you saw all those different like thumbnails for my courses. And then it's so easy to add content to your lessons. So let me just go in here and we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't boot me out again. Loading. Awesome. Amazing. So one of the things that prompted me from leaving Thinkific to going to LearnDash was because I didn't have any visual control. Like it was really, really minimal. And then I went on LearnDash and I had control over everything, and then everything kept breaking and it was a nightmare. So what I love about Learn Plus is that it's so customizable. So you can change the color of like the top bar, the sidebar, you can change all the fonts, and it's course specific. So right now, all of my courses, I just kind of cloned them to have the same branding, but they have kind of sub brands. So I could go in and I could like, my group program magic and group called confidence are kind of green themed. So I could go in and make the sidebar like green, different shades of green if I wanted. And it's not global across all of my courses. It's just to the individual course, which I think is really nice to give each course its kind of own vibe. And then in terms of adding stuff to your lessons, it's all drag and drop. So you have like headings, you can have video, images, like buttons, you can even put things in columns, which is what I did here. And it's almost like a web builder. Like you just kind of like grab what you need and drag it on over here. And then you can like save and publish. This thing down here is obviously like global because it's, moving to the next lesson and stuff like that. But what it's really nice, and I think what I'm going to take advantage of, because it's very similar to almost like a web page builder, is it ups the capacity or the potential of text-based lessons. So we all love a video. Like a video can very much be like a super great way of teaching, but sometimes we just need to give people text, and it's like easier to consume and they can just read things through. But the problem with text lessons is if we just give people like a huge mound of text, then it's like, I don't want to read this. So because there's so much ability for moving things around, you can very much like, you could have headers, you can use emojis, you can, insert images. They even let you do an option. Let me see if it will appear. Here we go. So like when you click on text, you can actually like showcase, do I want to put an image next to it or something like that? So there's a lot of capability in the visual editor, which I love. Let's see, I got some chat here. Can you move lessons between modules and duplicate lessons? Yes, you can. Let me show you. Yeah, I don't need to save that. So what you can do here is if you want to clone a lesson, you just go clone. And then if you want to move a lesson, you can literally just like grab it and move it around and either rearrange it, or you can like drop it down into a different module if you want to. So for instance, what I did here, I'm just going to cancel and exit without saving here. So for instance, with Launch Magic, I'm still building some of the materials for it. So what I wanted to do was just showcase that like these modules are unlocking on a certain date, but I didn't want to have to create a lesson and do this each time. So I literally cloned it and then just like dropped it down into the different modules, because I really wanted people to be able to see what was coming, to see like, here are the modules, here's how it's structured. I also, for creating those guidebooks, I needed to know the module numbers to be able to cross-reference with the action plan. But I was like, the materials, I recorded them and I wasn't happy with them. And so I was like, I'm gonna just push this back and do it differently. So that's an example of like, yes, you can clone and duplicate. The thing I haven't figured out if you can do is like duplicate a lesson and move it between courses. I haven't tried to do that yet, but I haven't seen a way of doing it. But
that'd be nice. But I come from Kajabi, where you can just duplicate a course and then just delete, and then that's it. And I'm like, well, no, I kind of want to rearrange my lessons. I've changed my mind, and then God knows I change my mind often. So I need to be able to move things around, and Kajabi is just.
yeah, good jobby. I know you can clone courses, because that's something that they recommend, is like, if you're planning on having the same branding across all your courses, then you can kind of like set up one exactly the way you want, and then you can create it like a template course and then just duplicate that. Something else that you can do too is you can actually limit certain modules or lessons based on tags, which I think is super cool. So you have the potential to like unlock content or like reward people. Something you can do as well, I think I may have talked about this a bit on the Tech Cafe, is you can create these kind of like advanced sequences where, like, for instance, whether it's a buying purchase or it's like they complete a module. So like, let's just say, for instance, they complete this, you can actually do things based off of the behavior, which I think has a lot of like powerful capabilities there. Like, you can unlock content, you can give an award, you can tag them, like all of those types of things. So it kind of gives that like next level ability. And I know that Thrivecart is working on additional functionality like every day, which is super cool. So and all this to say, I'm not a Thrivecart affiliate yet. So this is just based off of my own experience of using it and loving it. I don't actually make any money if you sign up for Thrivecart Learn Plus, but I just think it's the best course platform I've been in terms of like balancing user experience with functionality, with like visual design. Because in case you've noticed, visual design is so important to me. I am absolutely obsessed with it. I really like wanting things to be beautiful, and especially for the incubator, I wanted things to be really, really luxurious feeling. So I wanted to really kind of represent that in the visual design of things. Yes, and yeah, for sure, Finette, definitely Thrivecart is like, it's the best price by far, because it is a one-time fee, which is amazing. Okay, oh, such great questions. Is there any other, like, what else would you like to see, or any questions that come up for all of you?
I have another Thrivecart one, because I have this is what I plan on using with my building my course out with.
Yeah.
The rules, like, I know there's lots of options for the rules. I'm curious if you feel like you find them easy to manage. Like, there's lots of different things. I feel like moving parts, sending off emails, I'm just curious how simple or complicated that feels.
Yeah. So what I've done, actually, I'll just kind of show you. I want to go back over into the incubator here. Where is it? There we go. I haven't actually used any of the Thrivecart rules yet. I am mainly doing things based off of ActiveCampaign. I eventually plan on having it be like, here's a rule. And then like when people, for instance, I set up a lesson for each major milestone, which is where they unlock something. But because what they're unlocking is outside of Thrivecart, it's like a video review by me or by the copywriter, it's booking a call with me. I'm not actually using any of the Thrivecart tags yet. Eventually, I'm hoping to get to a point where it can be like, when they hit complete, like a GIF pops up and it's like champagne or like something like that. But I haven't done that yet. So how I have it set up in terms of tags is, when someone purchases, they get tagged in my ActiveCampaign, which then triggers the email sequence for the whole program. So in terms of emails that are being fired, that is happening outside of Thrivecart. Yeah. And I always say, kind of like in the beginning, like I felt more comfortable setting up kind of these like kind of advanced level functions and like more complicated email sequences, because I had run this program before and I'd run similar programs. But I think definitely when in the beginning, like bare bones it, like keep it super simple. And then we can also kind of layer on things afterwards. But sometimes if we kind of try to take on too much tech at once, it can feel really overwhelming.
I used to work at Zapier, and so I like to pretend that I'm amazing at automation, but I'm not.
Ooh, that would have been, that's what a cool company to like see behind the scenes of.
I could watch cool things happening, but I'm not that person.
Yeah. I always find I have to map it out by hand first. Like I literally have to like draw out what I need to happen. And then like, I'm very grateful that like my tech VA, I could just be like, send to be like, make the email automation, do this. And then I'd be like, I don't know if the functionality can happen, but just make this work. And then they do, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, I haven't set up anything specifically in Thrivecart. But for instance, like right now, like if you go and you open up one of these milestones here, they're pretty simple. It's just like, yay, you finished it. And then they click here and it opens up a Google form in a new tab and they fill that out. So what I'm hoping is to have it is like when they click continue, and I'll probably put text to be like, hit continue to like get a surprise and do that. And I know there's a way of like give a reward, which they say like can pop up an image, but right now they don't have GIF capability. It's just an image. And I felt like a static image of fireworks might be a bit like, it's kind of boring. So I'm like, okay, we'll just kind of leave it here. And then, you know, they get a little email being like, yeah, you did this. This is great. Yeah. Okay. What other questions or anything else that you kind of like to see, whether it's about Learn Plus or how I structured the incubator, or if there's like things for your own programs that you're thinking of?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So of course I love all your roadmaps and all your everything that like all that needs to be designed. So 2 questions. Is it worth going through the trouble of creating those for smaller programs where you have like, I don't know, 4 modules and it's kind of like really geared toward beginners? And second of all, would you say all those designs like as templates? Because I would buy those. They're so pretty.
Oh, that's a great idea. I should do that. I like put them in the course filter box or something like that. So definitely for smaller programs. So the first thing is to ask yourself, like, is there one journey that I'm taking people on? So for instance, like if you buy my individual self-study programs, if you're not in the incubator, there's pretty much just one journey. Like Course Creation Magic is like go from idea to mapping out your outline. So there doesn't need to necessarily be like all these pathways and all these like, you know, overview things, because for the most part, it's like start at point A, go through the course, get done. So if it's more linear in that sense, then I think what you could do is more of like that high level, kind of like what I was saying, like one visual that just shows like start here, go here, here are the major things we're going to accomplish. This is something I'll probably add in a version of this to Course Creation Magic and Group Program Magic, something that's just like, here's the process. First you do this, then you do this, then you do this. It's just nice giving people kind of a roadmap as a sense of like, here are the major things you're going to accomplish. You definitely don't have to get on the granular level that I did for this program. The reason I got this more detailed because it's a higher ticket program. So I wanted people to feel really supportive, really held. And also there's so many moving pieces and it's a 4-month journey minimum. People can continue month to month after if they want. So for a smaller program, definitely not necessary to get into this level of detail. I mean, I find in general, people love a checklist. If you feel like giving them a checklist, people love it, but it's definitely not mandatory by any means.
I understand. I totally do want to do that for all my programs from now on. Even though it's very overkill, I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah, I think like at the very least, just like a 1-page graphic that you can like, you know, if you have a video, you can pop up on a slide, or you can like insert it in a text lesson, you know, thinking about, are there, you know, am I leading you through 6 steps and each step is a module, or are there 4 phases, or like some of that, you know me enumerating things. If we can put a number on it, I'm happy. And so something like that can like visually represent it, where like each one has a color, because then that can be like a super cute thing you can include in your slides, where like maybe they can see the colors like building along the bottom or something like that. It's all those little kind of like psychological things that really add up to the overall experience, and like feeling like, oh, I'm making progress because like now I'm in the blue phase, or now I'm here or something, instead of like, especially I find a lot of course platforms that have the progress bar. If you put a lesson that's like just a resource PDF and there's no way to exclude it from the progress, then they're like, oh, I've only made 18% progress. And it's like, no, it's just because you haven't marked complete on all of these extra resources I've given you. So it can feel kind of defeating versus being able to say like, they can visually see where they are. Like when you show it on side being like, oh my goodness, yay, like you're halfway through the program, you're amazing. Something kind of like that.
Yeah, when you see, like when you look at the progress of your students, I have no students that has 100% because I have a ton of resources and they don't check those off. And I'm like, it's kind of like, I'd like to see 100%. Give me 100%. Come on.
Give me 100%. I would like this. Yeah, absolutely. It's something, I mean, I think I might even like submit it to Learn Plus and just be like, I would like to see if I can exclude these. Like these are the ones that work towards the progress bar and these are the ones that don't, especially because things like when people are choosing their pathways, oh, this is in the way, get out of the way here. When they're choosing their pathways, they're only going to pick one. So it's not like they're not going to mark complete on all of these. So then they're never going to like get all the way up here. I'm actually toying around with maybe even just removing the progress bar because I feel like it might kind of mentally be like, oh, not all the way through. But we'll see. We'll also see if Learn Plus listens to me and I'm like, please change this. Because it can be, yeah, really, really frustrating. Yeah. Oh, such great questions. Okay, amazing. So I've got a couple DMs from you. So for those of you who are wondering, like you're like, oh my goodness, like this incubator program sounds amazing and I want to join and like this sounds great. I can let you know, I'll just like actually drop a link to the sales page right here into the chat if you want to check it out. So what I am doing for everyone who's on the call is if you want to sign up for the incubator, you actually get the Voxer access included. Normally it's extra. So if you go through checkout and it will be like, you want to pay extra for Voxer access, this is included for you. So that's like private coaching layered on top of the whole incubator experience. So the incubator is $9.97 a month or $3,697 for a pay in full. And you have the option, it's the 4 months, and then you can always extend month to month after if you feel like you need more time. But the sales page kind of like layers all of the things that are included in it, but I'll just kind of show you real quick, just kind of basic what's included for you. So you get the full program suite, including my launch course, which isn't available to anyone else besides incubator students. You get weekly 90-minute group calls, except for the last week of the month, which I give you as an integration week. So no calls, just get caught up, kind of reintegrate what you're working on. I'm keeping the group really small, it's gonna be 20 people or less, so that we can make sure that in those 90 minutes, you get that detailed focused time. Like this isn't just gonna be a call where I'm just like, blah, 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 like, and like you don't get any time. I really wanna make sure you're getting that feedback. You get all the unlockable milestones. So like I said, all of those fun things along the way, including like a private call with me. You get a back pocket call in case you're ever feeling lost, you know, video reviews of all the different things you're working on, including that sales page review by the copywriter. You also get a private community. You get free access to any workshops I host during your time in the incubator. And you also get fun surprises because I love snail mail. So you'll get things in the mail, which I'm really, really excited about as well. So like I said, the investment for pay in full is $3,697 or it's 4 payments of $997. And because you're on the call, if you sign up, I'll know that you get the Voxer bonus. So you get 4 months of private Voxer coaching kind of during your time in the incubator. That's the end of the sales pitch part of this call. If you have any questions, you can let me know. I'm happy to clarify anything, but also if you have other questions about the programs that you're working on or anything else you'd like to see, we still got like, about 10 minutes or so. So you can let me know if there's anything else you'd like clarification on. Yeah, Annette.
Like I said, this is like a terrible, terrible time for me. So I was wondering, how often do you think you're going to launch this?
Yeah, so the great news is, and I know this is like not the right sales tactic to take, is it's evergreen now. So this program is no longer cohort based. So you could say I'm not putting the like scarcity in the sense it's not time bound, but I wanted people to be able to join when you feel like you can get the most out of it. I can't say it's always going to be this price. It probably will go up in price. And if it fills, then it will close until spots open because I wanted to keep it like an intimate group. But yeah, you can join when feels right for you. I think it's always good to join programs when you feel like you have the time to kind of like focus and work on the homework. So you're not like, oh my goodness, like I really want to be in here, but I have 5 other things going on my plate.
Yeah, 4 months of it before changing continents is probably not a great time for this.
Yeah, I feel like you might be a little bit busy. Yes, absolutely. But like I said, that my intention is to keep it evergreen, just so that I just realized that I was like, you know what, people are creating programs at all times of the year. They're launching at all times of the year. So who am I to say that you can only come in at like this 4 months? So I wanted to have it be evergreen so people can come in when they need. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything else about your own programs that you're working on? Okay, I'll stop sharing my screen here, but I just want to thank you all so much for coming today and for asking questions and being so engaged. It was absolutely wonderful. I'm going to continue hosting these course cafes. I host them every month. So if you think of like specific topics that you have that you're like, oh, I'd love to see you do a cafe on this, you can always send me a DM on Instagram at Modern Leaders Co. I know a few of the ones I have floating around, I think for February, because our next cafe is going to be on Valentine's Day. I think it's going to be all about like loving on your people. So like engagement and like surprise and delight and like those types of things, how to incorporate that in your program. I know I've got a lot of requests around gamification in programs because I have very strong opinions about gamification. So I'll probably be talking about that at some point too. But if there's any topics, you know, my biggest thing is I want to make sure that these types of calls are really, really beneficial for you. So there's always going to be like a focus, but then there'll be lots of time for Q&A. So thank you so much, everyone. Are there any other questions or any, like, what other questions do you have before we kind of wrap up for today, if anything?
Did you ever make my bread recipe?
Oh, I haven't remade it.
Sorry, completely
the
off
crust
topic.
level was so great, like because we had the Dutch oven, like texture was great, but so Fanette made this like phenomenal bread recipe and I was so excited to make it. And then I was like, well, I want to get good quality yeast. So I got like organic yeast and it just didn't rise, even though it was like in a really warm part of the house. So like our loaf was like this hockey puck, but like the crust was really great, but it was so dense. So I need to make more bread. I need to do that with like different yeast. And yeah, I will let you know. I will send you pictures.
Oh, I'm waiting for the report on that.
Yeah, it's so funny because like my fiance used to do the full like 3-day sourdough thing, you know, like the huge bread production. And he's like, why couldn't we have been making this so that we could show her we actually know what we're doing? Yeah. Oh, and thank you so much, Andrea. It was so great having you. It was really wonderful. Awesome. Okay. Well, if that's all for everyone, then I think we will call that a day. I just thank you so much again for coming, and for anyone who's watching the replay, I'm so grateful for all of you as well. If you think of questions that come up that you're like, oh shoot, I should have asked that. Like I said, my DMs are always open on Instagram. It's at Modern Leaders Co. And if you're not on Instagram, you can always send me an email. That's fine too. So thank you so much. And if you're curious about things, love to see you in the incubator. Yay, thanks.